Okay, I started recording. Everyone is able to see my screen still? Yeah. Richard gave thumbs up. Thanks, Richard. All right, so today I wanted to talk about big files in Git, and namely Git Annex and Git LFS. I spent quite some time investigating all the alternatives because I thought I should at least know what I'm talking about. I'm going to give a quick overview because I think the conclusion is very simple. And then I have another really short presentation on the big features coming up in GitLab EE, and then we'll have plenty of times for some questions. Oh, yeah, you can also just interrupt me if you have a question. So traditionally, everyone always said, don't put any big files in Git. Git is simply not made for big files. It's made to work with text files. So the moment you put any big files, binary files in Git, not only don't you get the advantages of seeing what is actually there, Git, it's not made for it, so it will work slowly and it will have some problems with it. Oh. So this has been a problem because at the same time, what we want to do is that everyone starts using Git for everything because it's really cool and you can do all these cool things about with it, and you get all these cool advantages, and it makes it really easy to collaborate, and especially in GitLab, it's really powerful. So these two concepts don't really match with each other. And what we've been saying is that, well, you use Git for software development, but nowadays, and for many years already, people not only have text files when they're making software, but a lot of it is also other kind of files like images or assets like 3D images. The biggest software projects in the world are games, and games have huge amount of binary files. So there's a number of solutions for this because even people making games wanted to stop using Perforce and start using Git. And one of the solutions was Git Annex. So what Git Annex allows you to do, just like any of the other solutions, by the way, is it rather than storing your big file in the repository so that Git treats it like a text file, it puts it in a different place and just makes a reference to that file. And all the alternatives to Git Annex do the same thing, basically. And they do it sometimes a little bit differently, but it always comes down to that you don't store the binary file in the repository, or rather you put a link to it in the repository and you put the actual file somewhere else. So Git Annex is significant because it actually works. It does what it says on the package, and because it worked and we wanted to have a solution for it, we made sure that it actually worked with GitLab. As far as I know, we are the only one that actually support Git Annex, and it was a bit of a pain to install. And to be honest, it is also a bit of a pain to use. One of the reasons for that is that when you use Git, you have certain commands, right? You put them in your command line terminal and you say, I want to do git add, git commit, etc. To use Git Annex, you have to have a whole extra set of commands. So there's a whole extra set of commands that you have to learn, and you have to know when to use which command. There's a number of other problems with it. There's little support for Git Annex in the industry, meaning GitHub doesn't support it. This is a big problem because GitHub forms a very large part of the community of Git users, of course. If not, it covers all. And that's one of the reasons also why it's barely used. And because it's barely used, people don't contribute to the project, even though it's open source. People don't submit support issues, so it's hard to find something if something is wrong with it. And it all stems from the same facts as I said before. It's kind of hard to use. It's hard to install. It's hard to use on a day-to-day basis. And it was really hard to get integrated in GitLab. And Marin still wakes up sweating in the middle of the night about the time that he had to struggle implementing this. Another issue is, and this is something we don't always consider at GitLab because we're all big Mac users, is that Windows support is kind of bad in Git Annex. There's some technical reasons for that, but it's not really good. And now there's a beta for Windows, apparently, and from what I hear and from what I read, it's still not very good. So the second solution came quite recently, and we're all very aware of, or you should at least be aware of from today on, and that is Git LFS, or Git Large File Storage. Git LFS does the same thing as Git Annex, but it's backed by everyone. So we are on board, we are trying to build something with it, but the actual implementation of the whole protocol is, of course, started by GitHub. It was based on a different one called Git Media, but that's besides the point. It's started by GitHub, and we know that Atlassian is also backing it. There's other big players with a lot of money that are behind it, and we will also adopt it. So this means that there will be a lot of support just for this product by itself. Why is there a lot of support? Well, it's kind of easy to use. Where with Git Annex, you have to learn all these commands. The only thing you have to say to Git LFS is say, oh, this type of files, I want to put them somewhere else because they're big or they're. So you can just say, oh, all the files that are like Photoshop files, .psds, or all my PDFs, I don't want to store them. I want to use Git LFS. So you say that once, you mark them once, a certain file type, and from that moment on, LFS will just treat them like that, and you can use all the normal Git commands. So it's very easy to use. You never have to think about it again. In fact, if someone has set it up for you, well, it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You do have to install Git LFS, but we'll see. That's a single time, this one-time thing. It's easy to do. Everyone will do it. Another advantage is that because it's GitHub, and GitHub is very much about making sure it works on all platforms, Git LFS works on all platforms as well. It's also one of the reasons why they used Go, because they wanted to have, it's written in Go, the language by Google. They have a single file that they send everywhere that you can install quite easily. There are some really small downsides to Git LFS. From a technical perspective, of course, one can think of many downsides, but for now, the really obvious ones is very new, meaning even though they say it's quite stable, the implementation, the API, it can still change. It's more a problem for us, for GitLab, having to support it, than for the users. But at the same time, it's also barely used because it's so new. I think it was 2 months ago that you can start to use it on GitHub itself. Well, with GitLab 8.2, you will be able to use it with GitLab. So there are still relatively little things online about it. There are a lot of blog posts about what it is and what it does, but about actual issues that people have with it, and any knowledge about using it at any scale is limited to in GitHub. Of course, that is not shared with the public. And for now, this seems to be the only real downsides. I think these also lead to the fact that, well, no one is using it, so we don't really know what the other downsides are yet. So I briefly mentioned there are alternatives to this, but they're all either abandoned projects. There are projects, for instance, Git Media. They started basing Git LFS off of Git Media. Git Fat is another implementation. They all have a lot of issues, are barely maintained, and barely used. So there's no real alternatives at the moment, and it doesn't look like there will be an alternative made by anyone soon that will really compete with the kind of support that Git LFS is getting. So if you were to place any bet on anything, I would say Git LFS, and if you're choosing for the user, which you always should do, Git LFS is also the best bet. So Git LFS, besides that, you want to make this easy because that is the only way to get these other types of users to use Git over something like Perforce. And at least this is my opinion. I think Git LFS is the first usable solution because Git Annex was hard to use, had a lot of requirements. With Git LFS, those problems seem to not exist. So it seems to be the first usable option, first usable solution for having big files. And this is a little bit the hope right now that this will bring these game companies, for instance, to Git, moving them off of Perforce. And that was the part about big files in Git, really, really quickly. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, did you
I have a
say
quick
that?
question.
Oh, go ahead, Zach or Ron.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Git Annex wasn't widely used or adopted, and everyone's just kind of been waiting for LFS, or what kind of is the current state of people using large files.
So we started supporting Git Annex, and I know that some customers are using it. I think that helped with adoption. Other than that, only people that really looked for it and were excited by Git Annex started to use it. The problem is that there's a few problems with it. One, I think there's only one developer really working on it. He's really good. He did all of the implementation by himself, but it doesn't give you a lot of confidence in it. That's not a problem if it was written in a way that it would make easy for people to contribute and to host it. But it's written in Haskell, which is quite a popular programming language in the past, not anymore. And from what I've understood from Marin, it's horrible to support in any way. I think this contributed to it not being popular. Also, of course, the fact that you have to learn all these new commands, which are not, they are a little bit obscure, and it doesn't always work well, even with GitLab. So it's a combination of factors.
Cool. Thanks.
Ask away, because I can't see anyone.
I was wondering, did you mention that GitHub created LFS, or did I hear that wrong?
They are the main ones spearheading the implementation. And Git LFS consists of a few parts. They open sourced the protocol, but you have to also implement it on the server side. So you have to do that yourself. So in case of GitLab, we have quite a lot of work. We started at 8.1, and now Marin is still busy with part of the implementation for GitLab 8.2. But yeah, of Git LFS, the project itself, it is spearheaded by GitHub.
Hey, Yup, it's Ashley. I talked to Perforce yesterday, and they're launching this, or LFS, in January, they said. Something to do with Git Fusion. What is the difference between their offering and ours? Do you have any ideas? Maybe Hayden could help too.
I suspect that if they do it in Git Fusion, they can do replication between nodes that are distributed over the world. Other than that, I'm not aware of any differences between implementations because they're not open source.
Yeah, Ashley, you're talking about the the difference between LFS and Perforce in general, or did you say that Perforce is going to support LFS too?
They are launching support for LFS in January. We talked about it yesterday, and so I was just curious if we're trying to kind of, in a way, partner with them on GitSwarm and stuff like that. How are we going to differentiate our LFS from their LFS? I'm not saying we should. Just, is it different in some key way, or is it pretty much the same thing?
I find that pretty interesting that they're going to support LFS, because their big, value proposition is the fact that the Perforce server can handle large binaries anyway. So it seems like they're kind of double dipping. They're going to support LFS on the Git side for large files, but then their integration with Git allows you to put large binaries into Perforce anyway. So I'm not really sure what their strategy is there.
Got it. Thank you.
Yob, I've got a question. You said that administrator can set it up. So does that mean that it's once the administrator sets it up, then all the users will be able to won't have to do anything at all?
No, they have to actually install Git LFS, but it's a one-time thing and it's easy to do.
Okay. Second question: how scalable will it be? Bearing in mind that the size of the files will, if you have a large number of users, will it become a problem for scalability?
We don't know. It should. I mean, it uses the same ID that Git uses. And it works with we don't know. That is the real answer. It's probably going to be fine because you're just transmitting one file to a place and then other people can retrieve that file. That is something that we know we can do. So it's probably going to be fine, but we have no idea. We don't know anything about scale. GitHub is the only one that right now has it at scale. I think that GitLab.com, if we activate LFS there, it will be the second biggest implementation and distribution of Git LFS. And yeah, we will discover really quickly. I know that GitHub.com, they limit the amount of data that you can store, but also the amount of data that you can transmit. So you can only transmit 1 gigabyte of data, which is really, really limited. So I think they are afraid of that as well. Let's see. I mean, the implementation seems to be good.
And then a couple more questions. Will we continue to support Git Annex and LFS moving forward?
Hey, for now, yeah. Let's see about the future. I don't know. I think, to be honest, I think Git LFS will replace Annex completely. And at one point, we might choose to stop supporting Git Annex. Probably our customers will move over to LFS before we stop supporting Annex.
And then finally, from 8.2 onwards, will this mean that we become a better proposition for app developers and game developers out there that use bigger files?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. We could make a big noise about that then. Great. Yeah, thank you. That's all. That's me done.
Yeah, quick question from me. Maybe I missed this in the presentation. I joined a couple of minutes late, but does Git LFS use symlinks?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so that's actually what the SHA is attached to, is the symlink?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so it's very similar to the way that Annex worked, but it's just a different implementation, kind of.
Yeah, I can share a nice blog post that does a nice comparison. Also on the technical side, I didn't want to dive into technical details, but yeah,
that's cool.
I think the implementation of LFS is fine. It looks nice, but we have to learn about this.
Cool. Can you share with me as much information as you have about LFS? I'm working with our PR team to pitch this as a big launch for us, because I think it is a big launch. Either it's this month or next month, and so I need to understand it more so I can pitch it to them. So whatever you have, please share with me. And I'm also working with Marin to get a better understanding of it.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you.
Hey, Yab, Chad here. You mentioned GitHub. Is that to say Bitbucket doesn't have this functionality at this time?
I don't know if they already have it, but I do know it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure this is priority number 1 for them. This is a big thing for anybody in the space. So in a year it will be, if you don't support Git LFS.
But in there for a second, Bitbucket was on stage during a GitHub Universe conference saying that they were also doing LFS together with GitHub.
There we go. Not surprised. Thanks, Itza.
I put a blog post in the marketing room where they talk about it.
Actually, one consideration, like this is probably shipping in beta in this release. So if we make a lot of noise about this and people download us because of the LFS support, they're probably going to be pretty disappointed. So consider pushing just making sure in our blog post announcement we say it's in beta, and then do the PR push next release anyway. Is that an idea?
So waiting until December 22nd to do the push behind LFS instead, since it's going out in beta this time?
Yeah, well, ask Madden what he thinks about the code, but this stuff is kind of tricky. So
a lot of times,
I'm pretty sure.
A lot of the times people don't download immediately. They just want to know that we're working on it, and then we can be clear in that messaging. So I'll talk to Marin and see how good he thinks the code is before making too much of a noise about it. But if not this month, I'd like to talk about it next month.
Yeah, it depends also a bit when we can put it out on GitLab.com. If we can put it out on GitLab.com sooner, we can ask people to test it, and then we know more.
Okay, and so GitLab.com's been pretty unstable. Are we waiting to add more to it while we try to get stability better, or no?
No, we're just going to make it worse.
That's what I like to hear. Okay.
Yeah, this is it's a whole other discussion whether we should enable it immediately at GitLab.com. We should. But... So if there are no more questions,
because we have to test it before the release.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you have any more questions about this, you can always ask. I have a really short, like 4 slides on what is coming up in big EE features in the next releases. It was decided yesterday night with Sietse, so it's really fresh. First thing, so these are all EE exclusive features. So only in Enterprise Edition will you see these cool features. This is the first cool new feature that will land next Sunday, which is repository mirroring. So what you can do in GitLab is you can set up a mirror repository. So you can say, I want this repository that I have here in GitLab to always pull every single hour everything from a remote repository. So if you have, for instance, your main project where you work with a lot of people on GitHub, then what you can do is you can simply link to there and you say, oh, I want to mirror it in GitLab so that in GitLab people can also find my project and it will be up to date, etc., etc. So we add that feature. It's nice, for instance, if you have multiple locations or multiple servers. There's a lot of usage for it, and there's been some demand for it. This is only a single repository, so this is not the entire instance. That is something we'll do in the future in GitLab 9 or 8 point a lot. But this is a cool feature. Any questions about this? Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, how is the mirroring done? Is it like, is it a cron job or is it a push? Like a push is done every time you do it, or is it something that does it just periodically keeps checking?
Kelvin, besides not being able to hear you very well, I'm not sure. Ask Douwe. He's in the middle of the implementation. I think it's just merged, so you can just look it up and then tell us all. Because now you made me curious. I don't know if it's a cron job. I don't think so. I think we use something more fancy. The next feature is issue wait. I don't have a cool screenshot to show you yet. Oh, actually I had, but while I was making this presentation, it didn't exist yet. In GitLab 8.3, we'll add the ability to add some sort of a wait to an issue. So that means that in traditional issue tracking or ticketing systems like Jira, you can say, oh, this is a really big job, or this is something really small, and you can specify that. And that allows you to track, for instance, what the total amount of work is that you have set for a certain milestone or for a certain release. Something we'll start to use and we'll kind of need. So we'll only add that to GitLab Enterprise Edition. And it will just be a field so that you can put there anything you want. So we leave it really flexible. And then in future releases, we can add things like graphs and things that allow you to do more with that. And this is a start. Any questions about this?
It's a cool feature. I like it.
So my plan is that over time, whereas now we have Enterprise Edition exclusive features only in like permission management, so like LDAP groups and such, and one for merge requests where you have the approvers feature, is that in time we have for every little part of GitLab, issues, wiki, etc., there is some feature that is Enterprise Edition exclusive, so that if someone is using Enterprise Edition for a certain reason, oh, because GitLab for a certain reason, I like your issue tracker so much, then you can say, oh, well, Enterprise Edition has that feature there. Or, oh, I just want to use your file browser because it's so good. We can say, well, there we have this really cool feature in Enterprise Edition. We should always keep in mind it should be enterprise things. But I think over time we can think of things that are interesting for enterprises and not for small groups of people. And then this is like a mega big deal, and I'm super excited that we're going to do it in GitLab 8.4. And I've talked about it with many of you already. We're going to do Elasticsearch in GitLab 8.4, which is a really cool way to start the year. Elasticsearch, Elasticsearch is the term of the product that we'll use. What it is really fast, really powerful search through anything in GitLab. That means that if you search for anything, immediately you will get a result of anything that you have access to on the entire instance, if that is what you want, including code. So you'll be able to search in code throughout the whole server. It's actually what GitHub uses right now. It's a really powerful feature, and I think it's much requested. And I think that was it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can I ask you a question on that, Job?
Yes.
On Elasticsearch, does that mean that if it's a private repository and someone's written some code about something that I'm looking up, it'll be able to tell me that there's something about that search term?
No,
but I can't actually access it.
No. We don't have any plans to disclose private information. It would be a bad idea.
Cool. Thank you.
Are they open source, or did we have to strike a partnership with them?
Elasticsearch, the product itself is open source. I think they have some proprietary stuff. They're making a lot of money somehow, so we'll have to see how to do it. But probably we'll be able to use it.
Should be exciting.
Good.
So,
great stuff.
If you are curious about this, and I totally think you should be curious about this because this is what you're working for with and such, you should look at the direction doc now and then. You don't have to study it because there's a lot of words there, but there are some nice tabs with like each release, and it says what the feature is in that release, and it links to the issue about it. And if you click on it, you'll see screenshots of how it looks. And then you can weigh in, and you can say, oh, this is cool, or this is not cool, or this is stupid. And don't think that because you don't really know a lot about it, that your opinion is not valued. It really is. I think it's really, really cool when people go into an issue and say, I think this is really great. We're adding a feature in this release that you can vote on things. So from the next release on, you can go into the things that you see in direction, and you can vote. You can say, this is cool, just like exactly like in Slack. So you should totally do that. And in fact, if you have a really good idea, it's just create an issue or send me a message, and then we add it there as one of the things that we want to do. Or maybe you can say, oh, this is really cool, but a really big customer wants this, and it's coming only in 8 releases. Maybe we can add it to this release. And I'll probably say no, but it's great to collaborate on that and to be able to understand from each other what we're doing and what we're going to do in the future. So please look at this page. And give me feedback about it and tell me what's wrong with it or what not, and then we'll update it. And in the same line, if you get a request from a customer about anything at all, you can pass them to this page, of course, but you can also pass them on to me or make an issue. That is the best thing you can possibly do, make an issue, so that if there's any kind of request, no matter if it's big or small, we should be able to hear it, and it should resonate, and it should end up in the direction doc, and it should eventually end up in a milestone in some way or another. And we've always been really good at doing this, but it's extremely important that you all keep on making sure that any feedback that you get goes straight into the product, because only if we work together, we can make it better. And you spend the most time with customers than of anyone here. And that was it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks,
Thank
Job.
you, Job.
Awesome. Thanks, Job.
Welcome. All right. So if there's no questions, let's end it here then for today. You're out of class early today. That's nice for everyone. And
thank you, Job.
Feel free to email me if you have questions, or Slack. We have a channel.
All right. Thanks a lot.